I started working very, very deeply on making sure my NPS of the product should be very, very high. My customer should be so happy that he or she should definitely recommend 2-3 people in the product. So I invested building an entire team to bring happiness to customer. So we created a process saying after we deliver a product, by the way, this could be a very new thing to the country. I think this is what we did. When we deliver the product, we call the customer after the delivery of the product. Like very few people do that. Just to check, hey, did you receive the mattress in the tight, intact condition or not? They'll say, yeah, we received, we did not. So we'll take it a feedback and probably find a root cause and solve it. But many of them say, hey, yes, we received the mattress very intact. Now, after that first call, we'll call them again after 30 days. Now, this time we'll ask, hey, you've used this mattress for almost 4 weeks now. Hope you're sleeping comfortably. And that was the time you built relationship with the customer. Like the customer was like, wow, I have never had this. I never expected that somebody's going to call me and ask me if am I comfortable using the product. And next, what we built a year long. After a year also, we are going to call you and he say, hey, now it's an year. I hope you are still very happy. I mean, this time we really kind of rang so many bells in the customer's ear that hey, we care for you, we care for you, we care for you, and that has led to an exponential word of mouth journey for us. Like we found a formula to kind of how do you exponentially grow this.
Today we have with us Ankit Garg, co-founder of WakeFit. Sleep and home solution startup WakeFit is one of the fastest growing D2C brands in India. WakeFit has been a trendsetter for its customer centric practices and creative marketing strategies, gaining attention for campaigns like the viral sleep internship program. Welcome, Ankit, to the podcast.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you.
Ankit, before we delve into the success of WakeFit, right? Because everybody talks about success, right? I want to start the podcast with a common theme called failure. And you highlighted in offline conversations that,
Yeah.
how you went through a tough phase. So, can you share your journey before WakeFit and what was that tough phase that you shared, right? Took you into a very lonely
Yeah.
state?
Yeah, I think before I was just talking to you. I was having a word with some CII industry federations that are based out of Madhya Pradesh. I was having a word with a bunch of entrepreneurs in Madhya Pradesh, and they happened to ask me, what are the few learnings that you would share? I think I can probably share at a bigger platform like this. Um, so one of the things that the learning came in is that it's better to fail early stage in your life. Probably, worst would be that you fail after 5 years of starting a startup. Like I can't imagine failing now. Because it would probably be a devastation in the whole thing. But it's always best if you can fail earlier as possible. And I think one of the benefit that as an entrepreneur you get, and what I faced in my life is that you when you start your entrepreneurship or you start working on creating some company, the one thing that you're blessed with is that you don't know you're going to fail, right? So the fear of failure is almost zero. Like everybody in your house, in your home, your parents, your friends, everybody saying, hey, please don't do that, you've got a nice job, you're going to start this, blah blah blah. But you are so convinced and held by that nobody in the world can actually fail me because I've got a very nice idea and I know how to cook it, right? So I think that's what I shared with them, and they were saying, yeah, this is so important that we now have 40 years or 50 years of experience, and we are veterans in our industry, and this gives you a very biased view on how you should look at building new businesses now because you come with your experience and you probably don't want to fail something like that. But I think in my case, exactly the same thing happened. Uh, I, I I was working for an MNC. I was a salesman, selling chemicals for 4.5 years to multiple industries, like from footwear to automotive to furniture. Like I spent 4.5 years being a salesman. Later in that life, I wanted to create something of my own self, and then I started one manufacturing facility with a little bit of innovation on technology on how to manufacture. And I was so biased, that when I wanted to start, I locked myself in my room. It's really a story that we were two friends. We were really living in a 2 BHK apartment in Noida, and I happened to be in one of the room, and I locked the room and I created a laboratory inside the room. I think I almost cooked for 3 to 4 months the recipe on how to make a foam, a very differentiated way of manufacturing foam. Finally came up with and showed it to the product to the market, and that the market accepted so nicely that within my first meeting I got a check of ₹1 crore from the investor and said, hey, let's just put up this into a factory and then start selling it. And I happened to buy the machine very quickly, set up the whole manufacturing thing, launched the product. In fact, my first early uh, customers were so quick to just accept the product that a commodity price was reduced by 20%. Examine, you think like foam was getting sold at ₹200 per kg. I was capable of selling it at 160 per kg with profits. Like this was just a great idea to kind of work it, and then got a lot of appreciation. First month I did 10 lakh, then 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs. Suddenly a big MNC came in and sort of they were cooking the same, almost same strategy that I was cooking, but they were cooking at a very large scale, and they happened to come with this strategy in India and disrupt me. So I got disrupted, of course, and I couldn't, you know, save myself, and then I went into losses, sold the company, uh, and then within 6 months of starting that company, I had to kind of wind it off, and that came the worst phase of my life. I think the biggest failure of my life. Imagine a guy from IIT earning a very decent salary at a MNC. You have 5 days working. You're just enjoying 9 to 5 job, and everything is like your father and mother are looking for a wife to come into your life, and then you suddenly you lost everything that you saved. You took loan from your father, that also got done. The bank also you took loan, and that is also done. Now you're looking at your father to for ₹100 note, right? There was a point in time that I was literally had to, when you're 23, 20, I was I think 24 or 25 at that point of time, and then that moment when you have to look at your father, hey Papa, can you give me $100? Like it felt so shameful, and it like how can you probably do this? So that kind of phase came. I went into depression at that point of time because it was a very devastating experience. Like first time in my life, I could not. I tasted uh, the defeat. Uh, but it took me 2 3 months to come out of the depression, and then I happened to go to Mumbai to a friend. I stayed at the hostel that he was studying in. Somehow survived by selling pastas on the roads. I literally cooked pasta and sold them uh, for 2 months, 3 months. Then again, I was looking for a job. Happened to work at a startup sometime after selling pastas. So this was my one of the biggest failure. But I guess as I said, if I couldn't do it that day, I would have probably never done it because I didn't know I would fail. Right. So I think that was one of the biggest lessons that I had.
And then how did you identify that the next problem you want to solve is WakeFit? When did you start working on WakeFit, and when did you come full time into it?
Yep. So this was December 2014. I think my first startup failed in July 2014, and then for 6 months it took me to wind up the company and sell all the machines and the spares and stuff. Uh, but in and I was literally Vela. I was out of depression, and I was now thinking what to do in my life. I started giving interviews where people were offering me 3 lakhs rupees salary, 4 lakhs rupees. Like literally, people were sort of finding a way. And this guy is available from an IT in sharp mind. Let's use it. But nobody was actually giving a value because I was a salesman first of all, and second as a chemical salesman. Like there are very few companies who sell chemicals in India, right? Most of the people are selling goods or goods that can be consumed by consumer. This was B2B chemical, like very difficult to find the job. And I happened to buy mattresses for myself that point of time, and I happened to buy for my friend also. Like I was looking for a pair of mattresses. I happened to go and visit a good D2C brand showroom, uh, and imagine a time in your life when you exactly know, because you're selling chemicals to this company, the cost of this mattress is 2000, and you happen to ask this salesman in the shop and say, hey, how much is it for? And the moment he mentioned the price, and you're wide open with him on what? Like I was really surprised when I got to know it's 10,000 rupees mattress. And I literally asked him, like, this is 2,000 rupees product. How can you sell a 10,000 rupees? He said, boss, this is the price. How can you know 2,000, 3,000? I couldn't argue with him. But that was a moment I realized that the industry is very inefficiently run. Like there's something broken in the whole supply chain or the technology, or I don't know what is broken, but the market is fully broken. That was the time I decided to work on mattress as a piece. But with my previous experience of failing one time, I think I learned very hard way of uh, how do you find innovation in the product, and how do you first test it in the market and then only look for the job. Like, so you might have heard a lot of phrases in the market where people say you should 100% work on a startup. You can't be working and working on a startup also. So I think I think very differently from that. I feel there's no shame in working in a company as an employee, and probably over the weekend you are spending your time in building your idea as a startup, right? So I literally did that from December 2014 when I had just put up an idea of selling mattresses. I set up a very small thing at. I did not set up a manufacturing, but I knew a lot of manufacturers in the ecosystem who were manufacturing mattresses. Went to them, they were kind to kind of say, okay, you want to buy one mattress, two mattresses, three mattresses, we'll give you whatever you want. You please go ahead and build your career. So I kind of getting that support, but it was very experimental at that point of time because I knew something was broken and I had to just start. So December 14, I started. It took me about a year to finally decide that hey, this is working, because in the last 12 months I had learned a lot. In fact, when I got a job after selling plus, I was able to save some money also for myself, and I saved about 8-9 lakhs. I raised some seed fund of about 5 lakhs, and I took some money from the bank for about 4-5 lakhs. So from 18 lakhs put together, I decided to invest in this business, and it was December 2015 when I decided to start this as a professional thing. I left my job, and then 15 onwards, I've been running this. So I think almost 1 year of experimentation and finding the right PMF and the validation. And I think when I was sort of capable of paying the factory expenses, the rent of the labor, and probably taking out a little bit of money for myself, that was the point in time when I decided to start this by myself fully.
And your earlier startup, which failed, was building foam for mattresses, which you were selling to these B2.
So this was not for mattresses. It was for automotive industry, basically bus seats, car seats, bike seats, sometimes the furniture seats also, the chairs that we are using these days, and the seats used. That is what I was building.
Got it. But that insight gave you the actual insight of what it the cost involved in building in the mattress looks like.
Uh, I think no. So the lesson that I learned by doing that B2B business were very very different. Of course, I understood how the foam is manufactured, and I understood the capital required to build the factory, the number of people required to build a product out of a factory. That little bit of calculation I understand, but I think the major learning from me that from the first failed startup uh, was that if if you're selling in B2B market, either you have to be so innovative that people are asking for you to kind of buy your technology or whatever you're building. Like for example, you build a SaaS product, right? So yeah, either your SaaS has to be something which is solving a real time problem of a customer, and hence he or she is engaged to buy a product from you. You can sell it, uh, or you should be content in yourself saying, hey, I'm perfectly fine if somebody is asking me to make foam from them, and I'm perfectly fine. It's just my factory is running. I'm able to run my day. I'm able to earn enough and all that. But if you really want to scale, either you should have a very differentiated technology that you build for B2B purpose, or the another discovery I had is that you can actually create a B2C brand, a D2C brand. Can you create a B2C business? I think that was a reflection like that. I decided from the first failed startup that I am never going to build a B2B business in my life, because it restricts you from having a very high technological differential capability. Otherwise, you are probably running a cash flow business where you're taking the cash from the bank, you're converting that cash into another cash, and probably that cycle is making money for you, which was not so a great thing for me, because I always wanted to do something very very different, have a very different name in the world, like do something very amazing. Making money was not my passion. I think building something which is tangible was my passion. So that's why I loved it. And the biggest learning was that I didn't want to do B2B because I did not had any technological superiority in my product that I was making at that point of time. I think in D2C, what I learned is that without having so much of differentiation in technology or something like that, you can still disrupt the market by having good products. There are different value systems that you can offer. Program, for example, you can offer varieties to customer, you can offer qualities to customer, you can offer right pricings to the customer, you can offer right, you can have different distribution systems to these two customers. I think so. The learnings were very very different. That when B2B business, you're just probably restricted to either running a cash flow business or a very technologically differentiated business, versus a B2C where there are 10 or 15, 20 things that you can do to create anything anywhere. So this was a learning for me that B2C is a space where there's a lot of discovery that can be done. You can build a very differentiated services or product to customer without being very technologically different.
Ankit, I read in an article that to understand the pricing system, you bought in a few hundred mattresses and put them up for sale on Amazon, and also
Yeah.
you made a profit of 60 lakhs on it. Tell us about
Yeah.
that incident. Uh,
So this was an accident. It was not a well thought strategy. Uh, so what happened is that I knew that the big brands in the market were selling mattresses, were selling memory foam mattresses at that point of time at a price of from 40,000, 50,000. A king size mattress is a price of 50,000. Like I was amazed, how is it possible that I'm selling the chemicals to them? I know it's a 5,000 rupees, 8,000 rupees product. Then how can you bloat it to a 50,000 product? Like I was just amazed, right? So I thought, what? Let me do one thing. Since I know the whole value chain is disrupted and there's enough gap for me to build a 50% efficiency in pricing, so I priced my product 50% of what they were selling. And then I happened to buy it at the manufacturer because I knew the chemical price. He was, very open in terms of doing open costing. Like, hey, this is a chemical cost, this is a fabric cost, this is a stitching cost, this is a factory cost, blah blah blah. This is my 10% margin. Give it to me. Even after doing that mathematics, what I discovered is, if let's say a good brand is selling at 100 rupees, I am selling at 50 rupees, I'm still saving 10 rupees. So there was just so much available in the room that I could make money. And I think I happened to kind of utilize that system. And Amazon and Flipkart at that point of time were trying to get into furniture market. So that was also a benefit that worked in my favor, that they were investing money in creating this category. So I happened to be the first one probably who started mattresses on Amazon. So that
so
kind
this
of worked.
was under Wakefit brand, the
Yes,
experiment.
this was all under Wakefit brand. Yeah.
And when did you start manufacturing your own mattresses? When was
So,
that point in time?
so when in December 2015, when I quit the job, when I had saved those 16, 18 lakh rupees, is the time when I had put up my first factory, because I knew the guy who was supplying to me was also making some 20-30% margins. So I knew there was enough juice that if I just make the mattresses myself, I can still save another money and pass on the benefits to this. So now, when a brand is selling at 100 bucks, I was selling at 50 bucks. Because of putting up a factory, I was able to sell at 40 bucks, still save 10 bucks. Yeah, that's how it went.
Got it. And tell us about the journey of Wakefit from 2015 December to 2018. What were the revenues, right? What were the challenges? Because you know how to make a product, you know now how to do the pricing system. How did you
Hmm.
learn distribution? Like, marketing was not your core strength, I understand,
Correct.
till that point in time.
Yeah. So, going back to December 15, I think that was the time I was leaving the job. The business was running as usual. I was selling 30 matters a month, 30 matters a day, or something like that. I was selling, right? Uh, Now, what I learned, see, I've got this very core habit of talking to customers. I don't know where did I get it from. I still think I don't know how this has come into me, that I just want to talk to customers. And as a core belief, I in fact went to a level that I used to meet customers after delivery of matters, and if they've used it for 30 days, I would give them a call on a Sunday. Hey, are you available? I would like to have a chat. I sold this brand. I'm the CEO of this company. Would you be willing to spare 5 minutes? People were so humble and gentle when they said, "Oh, you please come over." They used to offer me tea, coffee, make me sit for half an hour, and they'll tell you the story of how it went to the now, because they were also excited that a 26, 27-year-old guy is building something nice, and they bought a product and they want to share their learning and experience, right? So so what happened is, because of this habit of continuously talking to customers, I got so many learnings that how customers are thinking uh, around when it comes to a decision making process of buying a mattress. Now, what some of the interesting facts, I think you'll also be surprised to know, so I used to deliver my mattress in white gunny bags. You would have seen those white sacks, right?
Yeah.
So I used to pack them into white gunny bags and deliver to customers. The customer said, I received a mattress in a white gunny bag. I think some third class Indian manufacturer has manufactured this mattress. Before even I want to use it, I just want to throw it away. Right? So this was so fundamental way of learning. You realize that how packaging is important, right? I mean, they can't be so stupid way of learning that packaging is so
Yeah.
critical in a D2C business. So I learned like packaging has to be really different than what I'm doing. One customer said, uh, "You gave me a mattress, but I don't know how to use a mattress." And I was like, that day, I scratched my head and said, "Boss, what are you saying?" He said, "I got a mattress. I don't know how to use a mattress." So then I went deeper and asked him, what do you mean by when you say you don't know how to use a mattress? Is it like how do I like shall I wash the mattress cover? Shall I do I mean dry it in the sun? Shall I how will it can I increase the life of the mattress? Like he had a very technical questions. So I ended up explaining it. And then the second learning was that many people actually don't know how to use this mattress. So I created a process where every product once it is delivered to a customer, till today we call customers on telling them how to use the mattress and how to take care of that product. So this became a fundamental learning way, right? Some customers said, "Hey, my kid has peed on the mattress, or I have spilled over coffee on the mattress. Now there's a lot of unhygiene in the mattress. Can you take care of this?" Then I created a concept of outer cover and inner cover. Like one is a removable cover, one is a fixed cover. So removable cover, just like bedsheet, you can remove, wash it, and put it again just to maintain hygiene. So these are so many small learnings I kept on getting, and this led to continuous pipeline of innovations every time I kept on doing in the matters. I think that's what completely led to growth of this business. That every time I delivered a matters was a better product than last time. So every 2 months or 3 months there'll be new iteration with all the learning that I've had in the last 2 3 years. On top of that, from coming from the marketing side, uh, I learned one more peculiar thing, which is very common now. Like when you read in the books, you think like, "Hey, boss, like it's so common." What I learned is that beyond the point, I started seeing when I used to ask them questions like, "Why did you buy this matter? Like how? What made you decide to buy this matter?" They said, "Hey, my friend bought it, my chacha bought it, my this bought it. He said, buy is a nice matter." And that was a eureka moment. Like, boss, if your customer is happy, he's definitely going to recommend two, three, four, five people down the line, and that's how you build the pipeline of matters. So solve it. But many of them say, "Hey, yes, we received the matter very intact." Now after that first call, we'll call them again after 30 days. Now this time we'll ask, "Hey, you've used this matter for almost 4 weeks now. Hope you're sleeping comfortably." And that was the time you built relationship with the customer. Like the customer was like, "Wow, I have never had this. I never expected that somebody's gonna call me and ask me if am I comfortable using the product." And next, what we built a year long. After a year also, we are going to call you and he say, "Hey, now it's an year. I hope you're still very happy." I mean, this time we really kind of broke, rang so many bells in the customers here that, "Hey, we care for you, we care for you, we care for you," and that has led to an exponential word of mouth journey for us. Like we found a formula to kind of how do you exponentially grow this. So this has worked in our favor. We saw we saw that and over a period of time we realized that this formula of growth, which is word of mouth, might not scale beyond a point because you're very small, like and how fast you would grow because of this, right? It will all depend on how many customers you have. So what we learned is, can we create a virtual trust system? Basically, it's a trust system, right? When your customer is saying, "Hey, why don't you buy this?" When a friend is saying, "Hey, I bought this mattress, why don't you check it out?" Something like that. So we started creating this virtual confidence building exercise or the trust exercise. We started shooting videos of customers. In fact, in the first year, I myself has gone with a video camera and all that, small chhatri, umbrella, and all white lights. Went to that customer and did a video shoot. And we asked those customers in a very natural tone. There was no script, there was no theory. At that point, I didn't know how to script and all. Like, so I just made a video live, camera was on, and I said, "Just share your journey. Just share." People kind of made videos and they told about, "Hey, I was looking for this, I was looking for that. It was so nice and nice." You won't believe that. Today, I think some of the videos have some 50 lakh views, right? So that kind of just multiplied for us, saying, "Hey, now it's not necessary that a friend has to recommend." We realize that anybody in the online media can recommend, and it's just that somebody has to just make an effort to kind of figure out whether Wakefit is the right choice for them. So I think we found these little hacks every time we kept on correcting privacy. It's a cycle. If you can understand, I'm sure you would be able to appreciate this. See, what happens is you're selling, let's say, at 100 rupees, and the costs are, let's say, 50 rupees, and let's say 50 rupees is all the employee cost, logistics cost, this cost, that cost, like there's so many costs. Now what you do is either you can reduce that 50 to, let's say, 45, because of you finding new vendors or kind of doing some long term arrangement with vendors and stuff like that. So I did that 50 to 45. Now whenever I reduce that 5 rupees in the cost, I ended up passing 100 rupees, 10 rupees to my customer. So my cost will become 90. Now, because it's 90, I've always grown 100%. Like when I reduced, so this is a funny story within Wakefit. We say that the moment we reduce the price, we become profitable. So it has always worked for us. Like we grow, we become profitable. It's a cycle. Like you become more and more efficient as you keep on getting more and more customers. I think that's the cycle which we learned, and we kept on making all our conscious efforts in the factories, in the distribution systems, in the packaging. All the innovations kept on happening. That hey, how can I remove inefficiencies in building my product or delivering my product to customer, so that customer doesn't end up paying for my inefficiency, which basically the was the original idea of starting Wayfit, right? So I mean, these all four five things put together have been really working very nice for us.
God. And can you share till you before you raised money from Sequoia in 2018? What were your yearly revenues from 2015 to 2018?
I think in 2015 we did close to 70 lakhs. 16 we did close to 7 crores, and 18 we did 23 crores. I think that was the time when Sequoia came in. I think in 19 we did 81 or 83. Then we did 200, and then we did 420 last year.
And
This is,
this year you are on path to do 700 crores in
uh,
annual
yeah.
revenue.
Yeah, we expected to hit about 700 crores.
God. And what would mattress constitute as a like, percentage as a part of
So
it?
mattress would be close to 70% of the business.
God. And that's the reason for you to innovate into other product lines to expand your market.
Yes, I think when we had grown last year to about 420 crores, we realized that put together the market size of mattress and the total addressable market for Wakefit kind of a customer, the right TG. We quickly realized that the growth in Wakefit or the mattress as a segment would be not be a triple digit number. It's going to be under 100%. So we thought, as a company, as entrepreneurs, we are generally very aggressive. We thought, how can we continue to grow this company every year more than 150%, 200%. So that led to kind of an organic extension from just selling mattress to sleep solutions, which is pillows, bed sheets, protectors, comforters, and then we went into furniture market last year. So we launched a lot of products in furniture, including beds, sofas, tables, coffee tables, study tables, shoe racks, TV units, dining tables. A lot of stuff we have launched. I think sooner or later you're going to see a lot of variety coming in. A lot of new categories like cribs are going to come, dressing units are going to come, chest of drawers are going to come. So I think we have taken up a target that we want to in the next by the next March, coming March, we would be having entire range of home solution needs for a customer. Like beyond a wall, everything probably would be present from there.
Uh, by 2018, you had shared somewhere online that
Mhm.
you had pitched to 31 investors and everybody said no. Sequoia
Yeah.
was maybe the 32nd investor. Yeah. What made Sequoia took a bet on you as a founder? And if you could go back in time, what could you change in your pitch?
Yeah, I think the first question that what Sequoia believed in. I think first of all, Sequoia had this large portfolio of companies under the umbrella, and there were many learnings at that point of time that consumer brands are really picking up. So they want to do some decent consumer business, and one of the good choices that came up to them was Wakefit because it was a consumer D2C brand. Second, there I think what I learned about Sequoia compared to all those 31 investors that we had met up with in Starbucks to some CCD to some their offices, right? What we saw, the way that people do the assessment of a business, the way that they look at startup, whether it'll be capable of delivering the ROIs that they're expecting, is very different than what Sequoia probably looked at. I think Sequoia was had a lot of discussions on business, that what is this brand for, what is inspiring, what is the value you're offering, why do you think there's a validation of the value, what is it that new we are going to do, how are we going to discover new set of customers, how blah blah blah. Like there was a lot of business talks, but until then 31 customers, it was mostly like how big is the market, can you become $1 billion unicorn, can you do this, like it was all superficial numbers. Like everybody was looking at, can this become $1 billion company or not, right? But I think Sequoia was definitely looking at whether the business has the right fundamental or not. Then what time will tell, will become unicorn. So I think that they appreciated, and kind of it worked out in favor of both of us. um, and anything, I think you asked one more question in this, right?
Yes. Uh, and what could you change in your pitch if you could
Which
go back to 2018
for with Sequoia or the 31?
for everybody?
No, I think see, I'm not sure about the pitch that I would have been able to. I would be changing because see, as a natural entrepreneur, you always tend to be what you are. Generally, you're not able to do, at least in series be a very very natural in your tone, your presentation and stuff. Uh, but what would actually I would actually change is I will also probably assess the funds that I'm chasing, or probably giving presentation to them. I think we now appreciate very very deeply that the people who are going to be sitting on your board, the minds that you're getting, other than it's probably like a virtual founder, like getting an investor in the early stage, right? They're helping you much much more than what you're anticipating from an investor, right? So choosing the investor is what I did not do. I mean, we kept on going to everybody almost who knocked the doors, or we knocked the doors too, right? So I think that is what I would probably change.
And you had that fixed 10 million raise in mind, or you were flexible that uh, whatever you could
No,
get above a certain number, you were okay with it?
no, we at that point of time did not actually want to raise 10 million, because we did not know what are we going to do that with that much of money. We were profitable by then. We were growing already. Automatically we were growing 3x, like with no extra funds coming in. Business was full cash flow positive. So uh, in I think we knew that we have to raise money because we were putting up some large scale factory for matters, and we required that we would require close to $1.5 million for sure for setting up factory. Uh, Another 1.5 million, we knew that we're going to hire a lot of people, probably do a lot of brand marketing at Wisme, because marketing and branding was new for us. So we thought we'll probably experiment with just 10, 15 crore rupees over a period of time. So that we require a minimum of 30 crore rupees as a package for the next 1 year visibility. But I think Sequoia was keen on kind of getting a decent ownership in the company, and we were a little bit fixed, flexible. We said, okay, that's okay, because we knew that business are built on fundamentals. I think we're not going to build the company who's going to every year raise funds. So we thought, okay, if you're getting extra capital, we'll probably be able to live for another 1 more year. So we don't need to raise funds after every year. So we were a little bit flexible, but yes, if we were given an option today again, you go back and say, hey, just give us 30 crores, not 60.
Ankit, you always mentioned in a conversation that your first
Hmm.
priority was to raise money to build factories.
Yeah.
Can you go back in time and point us when you did your first paid marketing campaign?
I think we did our first paid marketing campaign in the year 2018. So until this is also a very good thing I just forgot. Very good that you reminded me. Till we were doing this 21 crores of business, we had spent zero marketing money. Like there was no money involved, no Facebook, no Google, no Amazon, nothing. Like it's going autopilot. I think in 18 we started spending money in the late 18s, and after raising money, I think one of the reasons that as I said, we raised from Sequoia was to actually experiment on the marketing money. Uh, it was 2019 where we literally went on Google, created campaigns on Facebook, figured out how to measure ROI and stuff, like very very basic stuff we did in 1819. That was time.
So one thing is word of mouth, but I clearly understand like word of mouth, and you also mentioned during our podcast, it's
Hmm.
difficult to scale word of mouth. But for
Right.
imagining like 21 crores of revenue completely by organic, and I assume it's all on through your website, right? People ordering through entire 21
It was
crores through.
it was 50% from Amazon and 50% from our website. It was mixed.
Yeah,
So
$50.
fresh new set of customers are actually coming from Amazon.
Yeah,
No,
great.
it was actually a point of trust also. I think a lot of people trusted Amazon. compared to Wakefit because it was no brand by then. Nobody knew whether the mattress will come or not. Those point of time, I think if you remember Snapdeal and all, there were stories that people will send stones instead of phones. So people were really worried that paying 15, 20,000 rupees for a mattress with an unknown brand, unknown website. It was really difficult. I think Amazon came in very handy that point.
And uh, currently, you own roughly, as per the public estimates, 40% of the market share in online
Yes,
mattresses.
yes, that's true.
So, do you plan to expand into like you have offline stores, but for experience, the customer has to order online only. But do
True.
you plan to open stores for where I can just purchase the mattress from the store and not from the Wakefit website?
So I think we are very hard believer of how do we remove inefficiencies in the system. So I think we every time assess any investment to be done or any business direction to be done, what we look at is it going to improve efficiency or not? For example, we are right now piloting with some of the stores, like we have opened a store in Bangalore, like there are some 15 stores in Gurgaon, Jaipur, Lucknow, Patna, like a lot of stores that we opened. Um, Now, what we are constantly doing through these stores is if my cost of acquisition of a customer or the marketing budgets that I have are more than the rental budgets I have and the people who are going to be paying the salaries, I'm going to be paying the salaries to those people in those stores. If it is less, then the retail is going to scale because I would have found another way to pass on benefits to my customer. For example, if 10% of the money is my marketing money, but through rentals and all, I can acquire customers through 5%. I'll go ahead and do this 5% plus 5% I'll end up passing to my customers as a savings from my equity. So we always look at it from this angle that whether with this move am I saving money and passing on to customers or not. If not, then we strictly say no to it.
And if you could share what is the current margins, right, between uh, the cost of making the mattress and your margins after that in a
We work at about we about 40 to 45% gross margins. I think raw material cost is about 60%. So 40% of the money is what is used for logistics, returns, marketing, employees, everything, and GST also.
there is also one very interesting campaign which you did, right,
Mhm.
and I think it still continues, the 100 days no questions asked, complete money return guarantee,
True.
right? And the story is that you were very afraid to launch it.
Mhm.
Can you share that story? And there were some hiccups also, that there were 3% return, and the 3% returns were by people who were newlywed, who were trying out various mattresses.
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I think we have been a very hard believer of not using marketing as a tool to get to customers, right? All of the examples that I've given till date are organic ways of getting more and more and more and more, and very layers on because we know it that we can't increase our prices because we don't want to bring any inefficiency in the system, right? Now this campaign of 100 nights trial, the idea behind this campaign, I used to be a salesman in the beginning. Like all the my phone number was available on the website on Amazon. Like people used to call me literally for the first 2 years of this business. And when I used to listen to the calls, as a founder, you always have a habit to figure out, no, why are they calling me? Like there's something hidden. Like they're asking you a question that hey, I want to buy a mattress. Is it the right price? Can I get more discount? Hey, do you think you will deliver mattress? No, you will not take money and leave. Like these kind of customers, there were hundreds and hundreds of calls, and every day I was analyzing what is happening, what is happening, what is happening, right? And one of the theory that I could articulate from all of those sales calls was that people were really afraid that they're not touching the product and they're buying the product, and God knows how the product would be, right? All I'm believing is somebody on YouTube has gone online and said, hey, this is a good product. Somebody's gone to Google reviews and checked reviews. On Amazon, you have checked reviews and rating. But you're really unsure whether this product is good or not because if somebody's sitting in, imagine Agra as a city, ordering from a Bangalore company. Like you can't really imagine whom would I go and catch up and say, hey, return my mattress, give me my money back and stuff like that. What we realized, and an outcome of this was this 100 days trial policy. We said, hey, if we know we have built the right product to our customers, can it come out as a commitment to customers saying, hey, use my product for 100 nights. If you're not comfortable, we are going to return 100% money back to you and take care of the return ourselves. It's a no questions asked policy. I think this was another tool to build trust that hey, we have created a world class product. Just don't worry. In fact, we started getting a lot of opposite calls now. He said, how can the mattress be so cheap and so good also? Like I'm not able to believe. So one point of time we had to literally think like, shall we really increase prices because of that? I said, no, boss. This is not us. We're not going to do that. Yeah, that was the story.
And coming on co-founder, Chaitanya joined you as co-founder in 2019. Am I correct?
And he joined me in 2018.
In 2018, he came in full time in 2018 or
Yeah,
2019.
18.
That
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
time frame. How do you make sure that in such cases, because like thousands of entrepreneurs are listening to the podcast, how do
Mhm.
you split co-founder equity in such cases? Like, how do you make understanding that both people are happy?
So I think there's no formula. To be very frank, a couple of people have already called me on this subject. Hey, I'm joining this company. Hey, I'm getting this guy. What do you think is the right, equity to offer in this case? What I think there are two framework I use generally when I tell people. One is equity is in proportion to the risk you have taken, right? And it just can't be basis that this guy has got a lot of skills, this guy has got a lot of commitment, he's very smart, he's blah 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 blah, right? It equity just can't be related to anything other than risk taking for the business. So imagine if let's say somebody is joining within a year and company is very early and the risk is almost same as when you started the business, you probably give 30-40% lesser than what you have. Almost I would say equal to what you have. But let's say if you run the company for 3 years and the company's product market fit has happened, you are making it profitably. The company is also growing, so the risk value has probably dropped, and you arrive at that number using some mathematical calculation, some very basic factual calculation. You realize that now the risk has reduced from 100% to 10%. So that's the equity I would like to offer. So this is how I went with Chaitanya also, and I think this is how I think it just fits the right way to look at equity. Equity is just risk, and if you're coming at a point where the business is very very risky, you should be probably equal a little lesser than the founder. But if you have lived a life for a decent amount of time and you know that it is working, I think you end up doing that calculation and figuring out how much risk has been reduced, and that's how you end up doing it.
And Chaitanya was the only angel investor that you had, who you took 5 lakh rupees check from.
Yeah, yeah. No, we had two actually. Chaitanya had a friend, so they both gave us 2.5, 2.5.
Okay.
And I still talk to her. When she invested 2.5 lakhs, she's also a good friend now. She invested 2.5 lakhs. I was just teasing her the other day. I said, "Was nothing like this could happen in my life. I have spent 6 years, 10 years not sleeping, so much of stress. But your 2.5 lakhs have become 75 crores. Boss, what are you doing?"
Wow. So they have not exited the business yet?
No, 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 no. She's just hanging to it.
Wow.
She's saying she's a very good friend of Chaitanya and me. But she has a very hardcore belief in both of us. She says that both are there. I believe nothing's gonna happen to the company. You keep on hitting it, and she doesn't look for exits.
Wow. This should be like the exit of the century, I think.
Probably. I actually told her that boss, इतना लालच मत करो, कुछ कर लो आप. She's saying, yeah, yeah, let me see.
Ankit, uh, you met 31 investors. Everybody said no. Even when you had 23 crores of revenue, like I
Yes,
can't believe somebody today with 23 crores of revenue
yes,
will be rejected by 31 investors.
yes,
Right?
yes.
Why do you think suddenly D2C has become so hot in like second part of 2020 or the full of 2021? And is it going to be so hot going forward that there are new funds getting created for D2C?
Hmm. See, I think some of it goes to the number of companies that have come up. For example, companies like Wakefit, Mamaearth, Oziva. There's just so many companies in D2C space that have proven the matter, right? And there are some of the companies who have actually gone public. For example, company like Indigo Paints, company like Stovecraft. I think some of the companies have gone and returned huge multipliers compared to normal businesses. So I think that conviction is coming that a DTC can be built without a lot of marketing budgets, without a lot of capex in factories. I think people didn't believe that companies like PNG and HUL can be created from scratch. I think nobody kind of believed that. So that conviction has come, and I think multipliers that people are getting when their IPOs are happening are also very very equivalent or even better than SaaS or tech businesses. So people have got this multiplier understanding also that's working. I think that's why there are very clear focus points, and of course it also uh, goes to the maturity of the set of investors that exist in the whole ecosystem. I believe some of them are the believers of D2C brands, and they show initial conviction, and then they try to convince the whole the fraternity around people around them. I think it also takes its own sweet time that early believers would start keep on pumping, and then constantly think about D2C as a space, and then some exits happen, and then you realize, hey, something new is coming up. Then you start really getting strong vibes, and this is a very important space that you should definitely do. And to be very frank, I think Amazon, Flipkart is are the true VCs, I would say. They have created hundreds of entrepreneurs like Boat. Look at Wakefit, look at Mama, look at so many brands out there. Amazon has created those so many D2C brands, right? So I think when you speak to those category managers of Amazon, like I'm sure investors have those relations with Amazon and all that. So they're talking to them in insight and asking them whether the decisions are right or wrong. And then when they tell them the numbers, the belief is very, very different. Like when they look at the categories are going 100%. Like all the D2C brand categories are going 100% because of some new startup coming up and disrupting. So the belief kind of multiplies every year, and you reach a point where everybody's conviction because you have seen the exit now. So I believe it's a very slow stage, but it was always in people's mind, and kind of we will explore this space. And I think it's a cycle also. I'm not sure. You see, you come from this background. I'm sure it's a cyclical thing that sometimes something is odd, sometimes something is odd.
Yeah. Uh, one of my memories of Wakefit is your sleep campaign, right? Where you're giving interns 50,000 rupees a month to sleep for 8 hours a day on Wakefit matters. Tell us about you thought of that campaign and how you marketed it and how you bought a very popular TVS star in it.
No, I think it was not me. It was not us at Wakefit. I think it was our agency. So we got this market agency called Spring Capital. And they are a bunch of entrepreneurs. I think there are three people who founded this company. Some really brilliant guys. And when they start up, I think Wakefit was the first or the second project for them. So they personally had invested a lot of time in thinking about what to do with this brand. And that's because of that sheer focus and the energy that they put up in this. I think they came up with this very strong idea of creating something like this. So thanks to them. But this idea, we did not think it would scale to this level. Like we were literally not prepared to kind of imagine something like this would happen. You would be surprised to know when we had gone live with this, we got about 2 lakh applications. Like literally, people came and filled the form. My traffic on the website went 4x. So I got calls from radio stations in Mumbai, in Indore, in Bhopal. Like so many radio stations called me, figured out my phone number, called me up here saying we are live right now. Like they randomly called over when they're live. And so, so I mean, I don't think we anticipated that the campaign would go so strong. Uh, but all the thanks and all the best wishes to the Spring Capital team. I think they were very very handy in creating this. I think see it's a gun about the entrepreneur spirit. You give any work to an entrepreneur, I think they can create. So when you see those entrepreneur spirits and founders attitude, you kind of end up creating something which is remarkable.
My last question to you, Ankit, is what would be your three advice to a founder starting in D2C to finding the right product, finding the right distribution channel, and scaling with minimum capital to, let's say, 1 CR of monthly revenues?
Mm. Good. So I think the first thing I would like to very strongly speak about is consumer insights. I think the D2C space is highly competitive. Uh, by the same time, when you go deeper into understanding the consumer needs, you find strong niches which are not available. Uh, so you pick any category, and you speak to 100 customers how they're using the product in that category, you'll figure out that probably 50 of them are being served by some company. Some 50 are still there, nobody's thinking about it. So go to the depth as much as possible and figure out those pain points or expectations or aspirations of a customer in that category. I think that will give you an answer of how do you create a niche, and then from niche how do you scale it to become a regular business. That is one advice. Second, on distribution, for since you mentioned about a crore rupees business, I don't think this is the right time to worry about distribution at all. I think online platforms, Facebook ads, Google ads, Amazon, Flipkart, they are more than capable to take you a crore rupees a month also without actually thinking about distribution as a problem. I think they're very, very strong.
How do you think of establishing yourself for as a unique brand? Because so many thousands of products available on Amazon and Flipkart. I
Correct.
can try
Correct.
something new, but how do you create that personal experience, that memory that I come back to you again, talk about you?
Hmm. So, as I said, until unless you're actually solving problems, nobody's going to appreciate it. So, what would be best is if you can actually talk to customers and figure out the problems. And trust me on this, we are able to solve the problem for customers. They are the first ones who are going to speak out so vocally about your product. Then a lot of word of mouth will come. But specifically from the context of Amazon, how do you differentiate product? How do you do marketing and branding? Let's say, I think branding should be left until you hit a certain scale. I don't think branding comes in very handy when you're very, very small. All you should be solving is about the right product, the right prices, the right value that you want to offer in that product, not the branding. I think branding is a bigger problem when you want to scale this business to more than 10, 15, 20, 100 crores per month. Uh, but with Amazon, in terms of distinguishing yourself from thousands of products available on Amazon, I think what really, really works is is getting those first few set of customers on Amazon, which anyways Amazon algorithms are built in a way that any new seller comes will definitely get at least some orders in the beginning to kind of test. I mean, they'll build the algo that everybody gets at least a chance to sell something. So you'll end up selling something. Just make sure that those people, those who bought your product, first of all should be very happy using the product, and try them getting to YouTube or to Google, right? Ask them to get blog, go yourself, thank themselves, do whatever. I think what you'll have to do is you'll have to go extra mile to kind of get those customers to write things about you, speak things about it. It can be in terms of Google review or Amazon review or a YouTube video or some blog or something, I don't know what, but you get that special feedback from them. And trust me on this engine works like this, uh, that until unless your customers are speaking about you, I don't know which format you want them to speak and work with, it will work for you. You have to somehow get them to speak about it, and that definitely works for everybody.
Thank you so much, Ankit. This was one of the most insightful conversations and very honest conversations which I had. Right, you spoke from the heart of how you like poured your heart into it uh,
Thank you. Yeah.
to build. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks.